The Basque Country is the name given to the home of the Basque people in the western Pyrenees that straddles the border between France and Spain on the Atlantic coast. Euskal Herria is the oldest documented Basque name for the area they inhabit, dating to the 16th century and thus predates the emergence of Basque nationalism by at least 2 centuries. It comprises the autonomous communities of the Basque Country and Navarre in Spain and the Northern Basque Country in France. Even though they are not necessarily synonyms, the concept of a single culturally Basque area spanning various regions and countries has been closely associated with the politics of Basque nationalism. The region is home to the Basque people, the language, culture and traditions. The area is neither linguistically nor culturally homogeneous, and certain areas have a majority of people who do not consider themselves Basque, such as the south of Navarre, where in 1996 the census reported that 71% of inhabitants did not identify themselves as Basque, although fewer people in the same area opposed measures to support the Basque language. Etymology. The name in Basque is Euskal Herria. The name is difficult to accurately translate into other languages due to the wide range of meanings of the Basque word herri. It can be translated as nation, country, land, people, population and town, village, settlement. The first part, Euskal, is the adjectival form of Euskara, the Basque language. Thus a more literal translation would be country, nation, people, settlement of the Basque language, a concept difficult to render into a single word in most other languages. The 2 earliest references are in Joan Pérez de Lizarraga's manuscript, dated around 1564 to 1567 as Euskal Herria and Euskal Herria, centuries.It and Euskal Herria in Joan Lizarraga's Bible translation, published in 1571. Territory. The term Basque Country refers to a collection of regions inhabited by the Basque people, known as Euskal Herria in Basque language, and it is first attested as including 7 traditional territories in Axiola's literary work Gero in the early 17th century. Some Basques refer to the 7 traditional districts collectively as Zazpiak, meaning the 7-1, a motto coined in the late 19th century. Northern Basque Country. The Northern Basque Country, known in Basque as Iparral, is the part of the Basque Country that lies entirely within France, specifically as part of the Pyrenees Atlantiques department of France, and as such it is also usually known as French Basque Country. In most contemporary sources it covers the arrondissement of Bayonne and the cantons of Morlaix, Licqueret and Tarbes-sur-Holus, but sources disagree on the status of the village of Esqueul. Within these conventions, the area of Northern Basque Country is 2,995 square kilometers. The French Basque Country is traditionally subdivided into 3 provinces: Labid, historical capital Ustaritz, main settlement today Bayonne; Lower Navarre, historical capitals Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and Saint-Palais, main settlement today Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port; Seoul, historical capital Morlaix. However, this summary presentation makes it hard to justify the inclusion of a few communes in the Lower Adour region. As emphasized by Jean Goyeneche, it would be more accurate to depict it as the reunion of 5 entities: Labid, Lower Navarre, Seoul, but also Bayonne and Gramont. Southern Basque Country. The Southern Basque Country, known in Basque as Agualda, is the part of the Basque region that lies completely within Spain, and as such it is frequently also known as Spanish Basque Country. It is the largest and most populated part of the Basque Country. It includes 2 main regions, the Basque Autonomous Community and the Chartered Community of Navarre. The Basque Autonomous Community consists of 3 provinces, specifically designated historical territories: Alava, Biscay, Gipuzkoa. The Chartered Community of Navarre is a single province autonomous community. Its name refers to the charters, the fueros of Navarre. The Spanish Constitution of 1978 states that Navarre may become a part of the autonomous community of the Basque Country if it is so decided by its people and institutions. To date, there has been no implementation of this law. Despite demands for a referendum by minority leftist forces and Basque nationalists in Navarre, it has been opposed by mainstream Spanish parties and Navarre's People's Union, the ruling party up until 2015. The latter has repeatedly asked for an amendment to the constitution to remove this clause. In addition to those, two enclaves located outside of the respective autonomous community are often cited as being part of both the Basque autonomous community and also the Greater Basque Country, the Travino Enclave, a Castilian enclave in Alava Vale de Villaverde, a Cantabrian exclave in Biscay. Navarre also holds two small administrative strips in Aragon, organized as Petilla de Aragon. Climate. The Basque Country region is dominated by a warm, humid and wet oceanic climate, and the coastal area is part of Green Spain, and by extension it affects Bayonne and Biarritz as well. Inland areas in Navarre and the southern regions of the autonomous community are transitional with continental Mediterranean climate with somewhat larger temperature swings between seasons. The list only sources locations in Spain, but Bayonne, Biarritz have a very similar climate as nearby Honduras on the Spanish side of the border. The values does not include San Sebastian since its weather station is at a higher elevation than the urban core where temperatures are higher year-round and similar to those in Bilbao and Honduras. History. Ancient period. According to some theories, Basques may be the least assimilated remnant of the Paleolithic inhabitants of Western Europe to the Indo-European migrations. Basque tribes were mentioned by Greek writer Strabo and Roman writer Pliny, including the Vascones, the Aquitani, and others. There is considerable evidence to show the Basque ethnicity in Roman times in the form of place names. Caesar's reference to the customs and physical makeup, the so-called Aquitanian inscriptions recording names of people and gods, etc. Geographically, the Basque Country was inhabited in Roman times by several tribes: the Vascones, the Vardulali, the Caristi, the Ortrigons, the Barones, the Tarbelli, and the Sibylates. Many believe that except for the Barones and Ortrigons they were non-Indo-European peoples. Although the ethnic background of the most westerly tribes is not clear due to lack of information, some ancient place names, such as Dibar, Butron, Nervi and Zegama, suggest the presence of non-Basque peoples at some point in proto-history. The ancient tribes are last cited in the 5th century, after which track of them is lost, with only Vascones still being accounted for, while extending far beyond the former boundaries, e.g., in the current lands of Alava and most conspicuously around the Pyrenees and Novempopulania. The territory of the Cantabria encompassed probably present-day Biscay, Cantabria, Burgos and at least part of Alava and La Rioja, i.e. to the west of Vascan territory in the early Middle Ages, but the ethnic nature of this people, often at odds with and finally overcome by the Visigoths, is not certain. The Vascones around Pamplona, after much fighting against Franks and Visigoths, founded the Kingdom of Pamplona, inextricably linked to the kinsmen the Banu Qasi. All other tribes in the Iberian Peninsula had been, to a great extent, assimilated by Roman culture and language by the end of the Roman period or early period of the early Middle Ages, while ethnic Basques inhabited well east into the lands of the Pyrenees from the 8th to the 11th century. Middle Ages. In the early Middle Ages, the territory between the Ebro and Garonne rivers was known as Vasconia, a blurred ethnic area and polity struggling to fend off the Frankish feudal authority from the north and the pressure of the Iberian Visigoths and Andalusi Cordovans from the south. By the turn of the millennium, a receding Carolingian royal authority and establishing feudalism left Vasconia fragmented into a myriad of counties and viscounties, e.g. Fezensac, Bigorre, Astarac, Bearn, Tartars, Marsan, Seoul, Labid, etc., out of former tribal systems and minor realms, while south of the Pyrenees, besides the above kingdom of Pamplona, Gipuzkoa, Alava and Biscay arose in the current lands of the southern Basque Country from the 9th century onward. These westerly territories pledged intermittent allegiance to Navarre in their early stages, but were annexed to the Kingdom of Castile at the end of the 12th century, so depriving the Kingdom of Navarre of direct access to the ocean. In the late Middle Ages, important families dotting the whole Basque territory came to prominence, often quarreling with each other for power and unleashing the bloody War of the Bands, only stopped by royal intervention and the gradual shift of power from the countryside to the towns by the 16th century. Meanwhile, the viscounties of Labid and Seoul under English suzerainty were finally incorporated to France after the 100 Years' War, with Bayonne remaining the last Plantagenet stronghold up to 1453. Modern period. In Navarre, the civil wars between the Agramonte and the Beaumont confederacies paved the way for the Spanish conquest of the bulk of Navarre from 1512 to 1524. The independent Navarre north of the Pyrenees was largely absorbed by France in 1620, despite the fact that King Henry III of Navarre had decreed Navarre's permanent independence from France. In the decades after the Spanish annexation, the Basque Country went through increased religious, ideological and national homogenization, encouraged by new national ideas embraced by the rising Spanish and French absolutist monarchies during the Renaissance. As of 1525, witchcraft allegations originating in a number of Pyrenean valleys on the rearguard of the Lower Navarre front and recent theatre of war were followed by the intervention of newly reformed and recent institutions, such as Spain's Central Tribunal Inquisition, the Royal Tribunals, and the Diocesan Tribunal, who left a trail of processes for alleged witchcraft and heretic practices. On the heat of the religion wars and the struggle for Navarre, persecution waves came to a head in the hysteria of the 1609 to 1611 Basque witch trials at either side of the Spanish-French border, easing afterwards. In the French Basque Country, its provinces underwent an ever-shrinking self-government status until the French Revolution, when the traditional provinces were reshaped to form the current bases Pyrenees department along with Bearn. On the southern Basque Country, the charters were upheld up to the Carlist Wars, when the Basques supported heir apparent Carlos and his descendants to the cry of God, Fatherland, King. The ensuing centralized statute bred dissent and frustration in the region, giving rise to Basque nationalism by the end of the 19th century, influenced by European Romantic nationalism. Since then, attempts were made to find a new framework for self-empowerment. The occasion seemed to have arrived on the proclamation of the Second Spanish Republic in 1931, when a draft statute was drawn up from the southern Basque Country, but was discarded in 1932. In 1936 a short-lived statute of autonomy was approved for the Gipuzkoa, Alava and Biscay provinces, but war foiled any progress. After Franco's dictatorship, a new statute was designed that resulted in the creation of the current Basque autonomous community in Navarre. with a limited self-governing status, as settled by the Spanish Constitution. However, a significant part of Basque society is still attempting high degrees of self-empowerment, sometimes by acts of violence. The French Basque Country, meanwhile, lacks any political or administrative recognition whatsoever, while a majority of local representatives have lobbied to create a Basque department, to no avail. Demographics. The Basque Country has a population of approximately 3 million as of early 2006. The population density, at about 140 per square kilometers, is above average for both Spain and France, but the distribution of the population is fairly unequal, concentrated around the main cities. A third of the population is concentrated in the Greater Bilbao metropolitan area, while most of the interior of the French Basque Country and some areas of Navarre remain sparsely populated. Density culminates at about 500 per square kilometers for Biscay, but falls to 20 per square kilometers in the northern inner provinces of Lower Navarre and Sol. A significant majority of the population of the Basque Country live inside the Basque Autonomous Community, while about 600,000 live in Navarre and about 300,000 in Northern Basque Country. José Aranda writes that 30% of the population in the Basque Country Autonomous Community were born in other regions of Spain, and that 40% of the people living in the territory do not have a single Basque parent. Most of these peoples of Galician and Castilian stock arrived in the Basque Autonomous Community in the late 19th century and throughout the 20th century. As the region became more and more industrialized and prosperous, and additional workers were needed to support the economic growth, descendants of immigrants from other parts of Spain have since been considered Basque for the most part, at least formally. Over the last 25 years, some 380,000 people have left the Basque Autonomous Community, of which some 230,000 have moved to other parts of Spain, while certainly many of them are people returning to their original homes when starting the retirement. There is also a sizable tract of Basque natives in this group who have moved due to a Basque nationalist political environment which they perceive as overtly hostile. These have been quoted to be as high as 10% of the population in the Basque community. Largest cities: metropolitan areas: Great Bilbao, 984,745 inhabitants; Donostia, 447,844 inhabitants; Herria, 346,716 inhabitants. Metropolitan area of Vitoria, 277,812 inhabitants. Metropolitan area of Eibar, 126,190 inhabitants. Agglomeration Côte Basque d'Or, 126,072 inhabitants. Non-Basque minorities in the Basque Country: historical minorities. Various Romani groups existed in the Basque Country, and some still exist as ethnic groups. These were grouped together under the generic terms Igichuic and Buhamic by Basque speakers. The Agates also were found north and south of the mountains. They lived as untouchables in Basque villages and were allowed to marry only among themselves. Their origin is unclear and has historically been surrounded with superstitions. Nowadays, they have mostly assimilated into the general society. The Cascarots were a Roma subgroup found mainly in the northern Basque Country. A subgroup of Calderash Roma resident in the Basque Country were the Rominchela, who are notable for speaking a rare mixed language. This is based on Basque grammar but using Romani-derived vocabulary. The Mercheros were Quincui speakers, traveling as cattle merchants and artisans. Following the industrialization, they settled in slums near big cities. In the Middle Ages, many Franks settled along the way of St. James in Navarre and Gipuzkoa, and to a lesser extent in Biscaya. This process also happened in northern Castile. They were all collectively called Franks because most of them came from French regions, but an important minority of them were in fact of German, Dutch, Italian, English and Swiss stock. Some were also from even more distant lands such as Poland and Denmark. Due to this migration, Gascon was spoken in the center of Donostia San Sebastian until the beginning of the 20th century. Navarre also held Jewish and Muslim minorities, but these were expelled or forced to assimilate after the Spanish conquest in the 16th century. One of the outstanding members of such minorities was Benjamin of Tudela. Recent immigration, much as has been the case for Spain's two other major economic poles, the Basque Country received significant immigration from other poorer regions of Spain. Due to its higher level of economic development and early industrialization, during the second half of the 20th century, such immigrants were commonly referred to by some Basques as maquetos, a derogatory term which is less used today. Similarly, a disdainful term, caseros, has been used by many immigrants to refer to the native population speaking in Basque. Since the 1980s, as a consequence of its considerable economic prosperity, the Basque Country has received an increasing number of immigrants, mostly from Eastern Europe, North Africa, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and China, settling mostly in the major urban areas. Nevertheless, foreign immigrant population is surprisingly lower in the Basque Country than in Madrid and Catalonia, despite having similar GDP per capita and significantly lower levels of unemployment. Language. Currently, the predominant languages in the Spanish Basque Country and French Basque Country are, respectively, Spanish and French. In the historical process of forging themselves as nation-states, both Spanish and French governments have tried more or less intensely to suppress Basque and its linguistic identity. The language chosen for public education is the most obvious expression of this phenomenon, something which surely had an effect in the current status of Basque. Despite being spoken in a relatively small territory, the rugged features of the Basque countryside and the historically high population density resulted in a heavy dialectal fragmentation throughout history, which increased the value of both Spanish and French respectively as lingua francas. In this regard, the current standard form of Basque was only introduced in the late 1960s, which helped Basque move away from being perceived, even by its own speakers, as a language unfit for educational purposes. While the French republics, the epitome of the nation-state, have a long history of attempting the complete cultural absorption of ethnic minority groups, including the French Basques, Spain in turn has accepted intermittently in its history some degree of linguistic, cultural, and political autonomy to the Basques. Altogether, there was a gradual language shift towards Spanish language in the Basque-speaking areas of the Spanish Basque Country, a phenomenon initially restricted to the upper urban classes but progressively reaching the lower classes. Western Biscay, most of Alava and southern Navarre have been Spanish-speaking for centuries, but under the regime of Francisco Franco, the government tried to suppress the newly born Basque nationalism, as it had fought on the Republican side of the Spanish Civil War in Gipuzkoa and Biscay. In general, during these years, cultural activity in Basque was limited to folkloric issues and the Roman Catholic Church, while a higher, yet still limited degree of tolerance was granted to Basque culture and language in Alava and Navarre. Since both areas mostly supported Francoist troops during the war, nowadays, the Basque Basque Autonomous Community enjoys some cultural and political autonomy, and Basque is an official language along with Spanish. Basque is favored by a set of language policies sponsored by the Basque regional government which aim at the generalization of its use. However, the actual implementation of this official status is patchy and problematic, relying ultimately on the will of the different administrative levels to enforce it. Justice, health, administration. It is spoken by approximately a quarter of the total Basque Country, its stronghold being the contiguous area formed by Gipuzkoa, Northern Navarre and the Pyrenean French valleys. It is not spoken natively in most of Álava, Western Biscay and the southern half of Navarre. Of a total estimation of some 650,000 Basque speakers, approximately 550,000 live in the Spanish Basque Country, the rest in the French. The Basque education system in Spain has three types of schools differentiated by the linguistic teaching models A, B and D. Model D, with education entirely in Basque, and Spanish as a compulsory subject, is the most widely chosen model by parents. In Navarre, there is an additional G model, with education entirely in Spanish. The ruling anti-Basque conservative government of Unión del Pueblo Navarro opposes Basque nationalist attempts to provide education in Basque. Through all Navarre, Basque language teaching in the public education network is therefore limited to the Basque-speaking North and Central regions. In the Central region, Basque teaching in the public education network is fairly limited, and part of the existing demand is served via private schools or ikastolak. In southern and some central areas, this policy has resulted in schoolchildren having to travel sometimes 4 hours every day in order to attend education provided in the historic language of Navarre, largely relying on public subscription or receiving as a result no allowances for school meals. Even in northern Basque mixed language areas, allegations raised by Basque speaker associations point regularly to a conspicuous disregard for recognized language rights, e.g., virtual non-existence of Basque language medical assistance across areas where the vast majority is Basque-speaking, insufficient Basque-speaking librarians, no broadcasting permission in the last 20 years for the only Basque language radio in Pamplona, Spanish monolingual signalization and even removal of bilingual one, etc. Spanish can be spoken in Navarre by the entire population, with few exceptions in remote rural areas. The European Commission for Regional and Minority Languages, to which Spain is signatory, has issued a number of recommendations in order to guarantee a real official status for Basque language, e.g., the suppression of the administrative linguistic divides of Navarre for considering it an obstacle to the normal use of Basque and discriminating against Basque speakers, the filing of the case against newspaper Euskaldun and Egunkaria and restitution to its normal operation, as well as guarantees to prisoners of receiving and sending correspondence in Basque, to mention but a few. The situation of the Basque language in the French Basque Country is vulnerable. The pressure of French as a well-established mainstream language and different administrative obstacles to the consolidation of Basque language schooling make the language's future prospects uncertain. On the 14th of June 2013, pointing to the 1850 Fallow Act and declaring thereafter that French is the official language of France, the regional sub-prefect declared illegal the Hende Council's subsidies to finance a new building for a Basque language school. On the 6th of November 2013, the Basque language school network in the French Basque Country, CISCA, bitterly criticized the French state before UNESCO for not complying with its international commitments and actually failing to accept minorities, by violating the linguistic rights. In November 2013, France decided not to ratify the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages.